Hello everyone. Axis and Allies North Africa. Is this the best Axis and Allies game to date? My answer is it definitely is, and in this review I'm going to explain to you why. The way I usually do my reviews is I point out things that I like, direct hits I prefer to call them, and I've shown them as a reminder to myself using green dice. Things that I don't like, and I've indicated them by means of red dice and missing in action. And for things that are missing in action, I've used gold dice just as reminders to myself. So other than that, I've put the numbers in, in the order from left to right. It's not so much that it's not in the order of this thing is much more important than something else. It's just from left to right on the board. So let me start with the first thing I like, the first direct hit, and that's the way staging areas work. For instance, Gibraltar, what you can do there is you can split up 5 supply tokens and send them directly during phase 6 of the game to the Malta convoy, but then not 5 all at once, because you can destroy 5 at once with a single hit when you attack a convoy. But you can send 2 or 3, so you will lose fewer of them, and hopefully a few of them will actually get through. And also note that the stacking limit on Malta is 3, which is also a supply limit in this case, so you can't even have more than 3 there at any given time. So if you have 5, you wouldn't even be able to land all of them, so 2 of them would be stuck in the water where they could be destroyed on a subsequent round. So yeah, I like that. It takes a bit of getting used to, but once you actually realize how that rule works, it's actually pretty nice. Something else I like is what they've done with the French units. First of all, you get to deploy them right away rather than putting them in the reinforcement area, which I've kind of blocked now with my reference card. But I like what they've done in the sense that you get to place them right away in Oran once they've become free French, so that you can use them in the same turn. So that makes them preferable to American infantry. And also the sense that they are limited. You cannot buy, more than 1 infantry and 1 French tank unit per turn. What I also like about the French is how they start off as Vichy French, and that even sounded French, Vichy France, and then they become free French units later on, and that is dealt with very simply. As soon as they actually miss, so they don't score a single hit while defending against the American amphibious assault, then they actually become free French. And yeah, I like the way they've handled that. Pretty simple rule, and it makes sense how they did it. Now, this is actually one of the things I like the most. That is the different units and how they work. They all have different stats, different strengths, different weaknesses, different costs very often. Now, admittedly, that takes a bit of getting used to, also because there's no battle board, but more on that later. Yeah, in the beginning you think like, okay, we have 10-sided dice, and what do they score on? So it slows down battles a little bit. But yeah, what I think is much more important, because after you've been playing for a couple of times, and then that does start to sink in and everything, and it does become almost second nature. But what is really nice, for instance, as you can see here, German infantry costs 3, attacks on a 2, defends on a 3. Italian infantry costs 2 and attacks on a 2 and defends on a 2. So it's cheaper. So if you just want to soak up hits, then Italian infantry is pretty good. If actually want the infantry to do something, then it's better to buy German infantry. What I also really like about it is that you need all of these units. In many other Axis and Allies games, it's just, okay, I'm defending as the Russians, and I'm just going to buy tons of infantry, and here and there a fighter, maybe a tank, but mostly just infantry until late game. That is really not going to get you very far in this game, also because of the 10-sided dice, but I'll come back to that later as well. But anyway, defending with just infantry, you'll hardly score any hits, even with German infantry, which defends on a 3, and on a 6-sided die they'd be defending on a 2, so they actually defend less well than on a 2 with 6-sided dice. artillery, well, it basically has the same capabilities as we know it to have from other games. The German anti-tank gun is dual purpose. It's an anti-tank gun, but it's also anti-air, which is why it's relatively expensive compared to some other units, but it defends on a 5, so it's really very, very good. And you can target tanks with it on the first round of combat. So yeah, that's a really nice unit to have. The scout car, well, that one has tons of special abilities, as do all the scout cars in this game, but the British ones are still even better. They move one more than all the other scout cars. But yeah, they're really historical in the sense that they have hit and run abilities. They can destroy enemy airfields, which is in this case, of course, symbolized by destroying an air unit. They can move through the desert where they are untouchable. They don't need to spend supplies. So yeah, really a fun unit. I mean, I understand that some people consider this, yeah, off-putting is perhaps not the right word, but that they're really challenged by the fact of all these special unit abilities. But if you know a little bit about the conflict in North Africa, then all those special abilities actually make sense. The German anti-tank gun was very, very good in defense against the Allied tanks and scored lots of hits. The scout cars were actually used in this role, especially the British ones. Yeah, and you can see all that back, so it's really pretty historical. Um, the German tanks, well, I'll mention that again later as well, but if you use them right, they're really devastating. In flanking attacks, it's almost impossible to miss. So if you use them correctly, they're very, very good. And the good thing is that, okay, so then I'll buy lots of tanks. Well, first you need to get them across in a convoy, and they'll be prime targets. And if the enemy scores a hit on a convoy, usually the units that they'll choose is tanks and supply, and those are perhaps, well, especially German tanks. So you know, it's not like you can easily buy all the units that you need and just count on them actually becoming available at the front. Trucks are definitely needed to transport supplies to the front line. Fighters are needed. They cost the same as bombers here, but they're also slightly less good in attack. Well, I'm not actually sure, but 10-sided dice, 10, yeah, they defend pretty well. Bombers attack very well, and the German Stuka actually attacks on a 5. And many other bombers attack on a 6. But what the Stuka has again then is that it can target sea units, for instance, and yeah, so it can target supplies, so transports, even if there are still escorts, be it naval escorts or air escorts. And yeah, and also the fact that it has 4 movement rather than 6 is what the other bombers have. That also compensates for that. So really all units have their own strengths and weaknesses, subs as well. Yeah, I mean, that's what I really, really like. That's perhaps the thing I like the most about this game, if I have to choose a single thing, is that all the units have their role and purpose in this game. And if you're lacking on certain of those units, you will feel it. What else do I like? Well, the coastal movement. Most units get to move up to 5 spaces, so you can get units pretty quickly to the front then. But you need trucks for that. If you're transporting artillery and infantry, for instance, and supplies, very importantly. And some other units, mechanized infantry or tanks, they can just use. They can move on their own, and they can use the tank. The coastal road. Also, the naval mines, a really nifty invention. They hit on I believe it's a 2 or 3 or less. So most of the time they will miss, but when they do hit, then they do score a hit right away against a naval vessel, and that could even be a transport. So if you put transported units there, you can choose to have the mines detonate at that time, and that would cost the enemy right away 2 units or up to 5 supplies as one hit, that is. So those supplies plus something else still. What else do we have? Well, the convoy system, I've just laid out a few units here. I'm not going to explain the convoy system at length here, but I just wanted to kind of show you. I'll do another video on that one day, I suppose, in which I do go into the convoy system itself. Um, but the way it works is first you need to get rid of the escort. So here the Brits are attacking the Italian convoy here. And they also have, the Italians, that is, a German escort there, which can help defend. So first you would need to get rid of these escorts. And then after each round, you get to move 2 units safely, not to the shore, but outside of out of danger, really. So you move them somewhere else in the convoy zone, or even outside of the convoy zone, as long as you remember that they're actually supposed to be in that convoy zone. And then if once you do actually start hitting, then then the attacker chooses one unit they want to hit, and the other side is freely chosen by the defender, as is normally the case. So that's a really great system. I guess it's human nature to try and get all the units across, and oh my god, I just might lose 1 or 2 units, so I'm not sure if I'm going to put any units in the convoy. But at certain times you will have to put units at risk, and just hope that some of them will get through, because if you don't even try to get any of them through, well, that will certainly spell disaster for you as well. um, well, something else that I like here in Malta, what I like is the importance of Malta, in the sense that it represents up to 15 RPs, which is the word that they use for IPCs in this game. Um, yeah, it's really important, as it was historically. It was called a unsinkable aircraft carrier. Well, and that's what it is. I mean, Malta allows the British to attack the Axis convoys. Had they lost Malta, that would have been very, very difficult, if not impossible. So it is very important, and to represent that, it's worth up to 15 RPs. So yeah, I like that about Malta. What else do we have? Well, Italy has a staging area, which is kind of similar to Gibraltar. As I said before, yeah, you will have to take some risk to get at least some units across it many times. But yeah, if you really think like this is pure suicide, I don't want to lose those units, well, then you can put them as the Axis. You can put them in Italy, and see if the situation looks more favorable on a subsequent turn, and then you can put them there. So that's a nice invention, a nice feature of this game as well. Excuse me. Here we have supplies. Yeah, well, of course, you cannot have a North Africa game in which supplies do not play a very important role, and they actually do. For every 5 units that attack from any given territory, you have to spend 1 supply. So in this particular example, there are 10 Axis units and 2 more over here attacking into Tobruk. So I like how that supply system works. As a defender, you always only pay 1 for each round, so not just for the entire attack, per round, and that goes for the attacker as well, of course. So yeah, you really need those supplies, and if you're having a prolonged battle, you burn through them very, very, very quickly. So sometimes you may actually have a very strong force, but no supplies to actually have them attack with. And that is actually something that happened pretty often as well in the North African theater, if I'm well informed. Also, what I like is if you have a flanking attack, which basically means that you have a smaller attack than the main attack, you get to reroll 8+s. Now, that's where the German tanks especially shine, because they would only miss then on a 6 or a 7, because 1 through 5 are hits, and if you roll an 8+, you get to reroll. Something I do find a bit odd is that you get to reroll over and over again until you actually hit or miss. It would have made more sense to me if you only got to do that once. But okay. Well, as I said, especially German tanks really shine in that role, because they're very, very good at those flanking attacks for the reason I've just explained. And that also, that also means that you will usually want to prevent such flanking attacks. So you will very often also have to try and defend such areas. Okay, so what else do we have here? Well, I've put both a red die and green dice next to this one just to remind myself. What I like about it, about these extra units that they gave, is that they gave extra units. They say it's to create your own scenarios or something. Well, okay, who knows? You might actually want to try out the Tunisian campaign, or the very beginnings when the Italians were on their own. So yeah, okay, that's nice. It's all good and well, but I think that in practice, most people will not use those units. But then again, it's good if you happen to lose a unit that there are some spares. You can consider them that too, I suppose. But at the same time, yeah, I'm thinking, okay, so you have a specific rule for tigers or Anzac infantry or something. They might have chosen, and that's why I put this die. They might have chosen to put some tigers in there or some Anzac infantry, or I don't know what, but yeah. So on the one hand, it's great that they gave those units. On the other hand, I'm not quite sure if they'll see a lot of action, basically. Um, yeah. Here, what I wanted to say with these dice is that I really like the fact that if a battleship is damaged, it's not auto repaired in this game. You actually need to get it all the way back to Cairo to have it repaired, which will often not be worth it. Often it's better, I guess, to just have it destroyed and buy it again, unless you're anywhere near. I mean, you probably don't want to retreat one all the way, for instance, from this particular example. Let's say that it got damaged in this battle, and you want to move it back because they can move four, so it would take actually 2 turns to get back to Cairo. So I'm not sure if you would actually use it a lot, but I like the fact that there are no auto repairs. Well, what I really like, although again this was something I had to get used to, many people did, I suppose, is the 10-sided dice. As I said, what it does, I think that's mainly what it does, is that, yeah, you really need combined arms. You cannot just say, okay, I'll attack with all tanks and I'll erase all opposition in one go, and then I'll take the territory. No, very often you won't. And as I said, you won't probably even get those tanks across so easily with the convoy system in place. So yeah, most units are slightly less strong, or even quite a lot less strong than they are in the die system, six-sided die system. Yeah, yeah, as I said, that really provides the need for combined arms, and that's really great because we all know that many Axis and Allies games come with, for instance, a Russian navy, a Russian battleship or cruiser or whatever, and yeah, nobody in their right minds is ever going to buy any. And I could think of some more examples, but here, you really need each and every single unit. The only exception perhaps being mechanized infantry. I haven't really found that one to be incredibly important yet, but of course, what it does do is if you place it, for instance, in Tripoli, then you can use coastal movement to get there quite quickly, which you wouldn't be able to do if you landed a normal infantry unit here and you didn't have a truck in place or whatsoever. So, but yeah, that's perhaps the only unit that is, or maybe I'm missing something. I know that it can accompany tanks in a blitz, but yeah, I'm not sure. That's the only unit that is perhaps not as useful as all the others, but all the others are in their own role and in their own right absolutely necessary in this game. Here, what do we have here? Well, the battle board, I can do it now. That's a missing in action. Yeah, I don't know why they didn't include one. I'm glad to see that it's coming back in Stalingrad. And this is one I got from historicalboardgaming.com, where you can download it for free. Having said that, I have noticed that very often I found myself performing a battle, and then I was thinking later on, okay, some units are retreating. Can they retreat to various areas? Where do I have to retreat to? And then I thought, wait a minute. They're not even supposed to be on a battle board. They're not even supposed to be in the territory that's being attacked. They are still in the territory they're attacking from. So, yeah, a battle board kind of trips you up in that sense, and it's not necessary because, yeah, that works slightly differently in this game. You don't move into territories unless you do so with attacking air units or sea units. But land units actually stay at the border, so they need to have basically one unit point left to attack, and then they move in, obviously, afterwards. So that's different. So on the one hand, I was missing it in the beginning, also because the values are all different, and there are 10-sided dice and everything. So in the beginning, you have to look up, okay, what does this unit do? What values does it have? And yeah, you have to look it up constantly. So then a battle board comes in handy, but once you do get to know more or less the values, then a battle board actually is confusing for the reason I've just explained. Excuse me. What I also really like is, and that's what I'm trying to show here, is that you have two different scenarios. You have Rommel's Last Push, and you have Operation Torch, and I believe that the same thing is kind of true for the upcoming Stalingrad, which even has two separate boards. Yeah, so that's really something I like as well. Not just one scenario, but two. And well, with the extra units I showed you before, then apparently it's also possible to yeah, to create your own. Like I said, Tunisia comes to mind, which would probably be a very short scenario, but still, or the very beginnings when the Italians were pushed back through Libya. I don't know exactly where that retreat ended, but it didn't go very well for them. You could use some of those units for that, I suppose. One of the final things, one of the final direct hits is the rulebook. I don't know of any errata or any errors in it. Of course, there are some clarifications on Board Game Geek and in some other places, you know, accessanallies.org. There's a FAQ out there as well. But yeah, I mean, the rulebook itself is clear enough. Very good. Nicely laid out, good examples. The only thing is sometimes it's a bit wordy and you're actually thinking, okay, a few bullet points or some kind of numbered sequence might have been handier here than just lots and lots of words to describe what actually needs to happen. But other than that, I think it's a very good one. Also, forgot this one, I think. I really like the phase sequence. It really makes sense. It's slightly different from the other Axis and Allies games, but after you've gone through it only 2 or 3 times, then it all starts to make sense. The order is also very important. You advance the convoys first, meaning that most of them actually land in the associated land territory. So for instance here Benghazi, there are no units here now, but so let's pick this one. Let's just say that this was the Italian turn. Well, then any Italian units that weren't actually destroyed would be landing in Tripoli. And some people have asked, okay, so can I move units that I have just landed on my combat or non-combat phases? Well, yes, you can. Simply follow the phase sequence. You advance your convoys, and then you do everything else. So combat move or non-combat move at phases 3 and 5. So yes, you can actually do that. And yeah, it all makes sense. Plays very quickly. I haven't even said that yet. But compared to many other Axis and Allies games, this one plays very fast. Turns are fast, rounds are fast, and the reason for that is that there are usually very few combats. Maybe there's going to be a convoy combat or 1 or 2 land combats, but certainly not what you have in some other Axis and Allies games that you actually have to go through 5 or 6 or sometimes even more combats in a single round, with also many more units. I mean, you know, we all know those attacks from Moscow and everything when there are, I don't know, sometimes 50 units on each side. And that's fun. I mean, that's usually in the end game, where if you're attacking Moscow like that. But here, there are stacking limits as well. So the battles tend to be few, and they tend to be fast. So, and that's something I like. Final thing that I like, and maybe I'm missing a few things, but these are definitely the most important ones. Final thing that I like is the inclusion of deserts, meaning that they're all impassable only to scout cars. Well, since we're talking about this area anyway, the scout car, the British one, is one of the things I dislike about, well, not the game, but the pieces and the components. It's so incredibly small that without this yellow chip that I've put there, it's almost impossible to see. Not now, because the camera is actually focused on it, but it's so easy to simply overlook that unit, or worse still, to actually lose it somewhere. So yeah, that's a shame. I don't know what happened there. Maybe it's actually to scale. Maybe it was a production error. I have no idea, but it's not very functional. So I wish that would have been different. Now for the things that I like a bit less. Off target, I tend to call those. Well, first of all, the areas such as Spain and Portugal, and then that goes for more. It's so big, and you don't do anything with it. Um, it doesn't have any function in the game whatsoever. What I do with it, I just put, some mines, some tokens, and whatever there, as some kind of stash that I can easily take units and everything else from. But other than that, it has no function, and there are many areas like that. And anyway, it's a shame. And why is that a shame? Well, because some other spaces, so for instance, Malta, or also many convoys, as you can see here, it tends to get really crowded, and also when those when some of those units actually escape, as I said, they don't go to shore. They actually remain in the convoy zone, but you do want to keep them apart. So then you start pushing them into corners or whatever, or into different sea zones. It would have been great if some of these areas, for instance, in convoy zones, for instance, Malta, if they'd been a bit bigger. And this is another example which I also put a one. Greece, you don't do anything with it. It's unplayable. I mean, they could have made the sea zones a bit bigger, and Italy also a bit smaller. Just moved it up north, because you really don't need that space, and you do need it in the convoy zones. You do need it in Malta, etc. Yeah. What else? Well, it's basically the same thing. And here I've placed the units in such a way that you can actually read the text very well. Stacking them at 10, land defenders reroll 9s and 10s. Now, I know that it's Tobruk. I know that it was a fortress in the actual campaign, so yes, it makes complete sense. So again, that's a good thing about it, that it's historical. It's difficult to take Tobruk, as it should be. But this area is also relatively small, and now I've placed everything in such a way that you can actually read the text. But normally in actual play, it's not always like that. Units are standing here, there, and everywhere, and such text disappears in the excitement of the game and the die rolls, etc. It happens pretty often that you forget. Oh my God, I was supposed to re-roll those 9s and 10s. I forgot. Yeah, so had this been a bit bigger, which it could have been if some other areas had been a bit smaller, then such things wouldn't be easily missed. Well, I already explained this one, what I do and what I don't like about it. What else do we have? Um, well, I already explained that one as well. That was the scout car. Well, I think that about sums it up. And the missing in action, yeah, okay, as I said, the battle board, and it would have been nice to have some tigers and some Anzac infantry as well, for the optional rules. But yeah, other than that, I don't think there's anything really missing from this game, or there's anything bad to say about it other than the things I've already mentioned, which to me are relatively minor compared to the fact that this is such a great game. Yeah, the map is a thing, like, it's playable. Believe me, it's playable. It's not like, for instance, Victory in Europe by Columbia Games, whose map is so incredibly small that the game becomes practically unplayable, because it's so small. That is definitely not the case here. But yeah, that's my biggest drawback to this game, my biggest gripe with it. Other than that, it's really a fantastic game for the reasons that I've explained. It plays fast. All units serve their purpose. The convoy system is really great. You have the idea, of course, within the limitations of the Axis and Allies system and games in general. I mean, you don't really actually want to be fighting a real war, but you really have the idea that in many ways, outcomes of battles, outcomes of decisions, you know, portray the actual situation pretty well. If you make certain big mistakes here, as I said, with the convoy system, sometimes you tend to be overcautious and you think like, oh, I better not put any units there because I might just lose a few of them. Yes, you might lose a few of them, but you will probably also get some across. If you're being too careful and you think and you're not putting any units into a convoy zone where you actually do need units, yeah, that is going to cost you dearly later on. And yeah, and that's very historical. That's actually what happened, and units being out of supply, even though other than that they were actually pretty strong, but they just didn't have the gasoline, they didn't have the ammunition they needed to sustain an attack. So yes, all in all, as I said, Axis and Allies North Africa, to my mind, it's the best game in the series so far, and I'm really very excited about Stalingrad and to find out what that game is going to add to the series. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next one.